You're listening to a download from the outdoorstation.co.uk. Number 497.
Good morning. It's Sunday the 6th of October 2019 and you find me, as you can probably guess from the background noise, resting in the luxury of the Cairngorm Hotel in Aviemore. We arrived yesterday collectively, that's Lee, Tony and I, and settled in for an evening of debauchery. Well, they did, and I gave up halfway through and tried to get some sleep. Ready for today. Unfortunately, though, we've all woken to a pretty appalling weather forecast. Last time we did Three Men in the Cairngorms, it was fine autumnal weather, a bit of rain and winds, but on the whole, generally fine walking weather. Natural for what you might hope for in autumn in Scotland. However, the next 48 hours there is various storm fronts coming through off the Atlantic, which unfortunately is being forecast as potentially 70-mile-an-hour winds, heavy rainstorm for about 10 to 12 hours, then a brief gap, a few dispersed rain squalls, and then exactly the same thing again for another 10 to 12 hours. So basically 48 hours of pretty miserable walking come camping weather. Now initially we were heading up to the Larry Grew, over the top of Brerick, down into Glen Nevis, and then back to Aviemore before catching the train down to Dalwhinnie and then doing a circuit around Dalwhinnie before heading towards Fort William. However, discretion being the better part of valour, and obviously it's best to change plans accordingly when the weather is against you. It is supposed to be fun after all. We've decided to head down to Dalwhinnie this morning. The train leaves at 11:30 I think, and start our walk there and basically take 5 days to do what initially was going to be 3 days. The only big downside is that we've all split our food packages into the first burst, as it were, which was 2 or 3 days, or 2.5 days, and then 3 days. And of course we're having to carry all 5 days worth of food, and we've all, in all honesty, overindulged slightly on the food purchases and not gone as light as we would normally do on a long distance hike, because, as I say, it is supposed to be pleasure. So we're all trying to repack our rucksacks now to get it all in. I think most people around the world at the moment are also being made aware of the environmental impact that plastics are having in the world, and suggesting that it's better to recycle and reuse old items or pick up second-hand items if possible. So I've chosen to do this on this particular trip. Everything that I have brought with me is either old in my loft collection of bits, borrowed, recycled or second-hand. And we're talking about items now that are up to 14 years old. So for example, the rucksack is a old Go-Lite Jam 2, which is about 10 to 12 years old, I think. The tent I'm using is the Power Lizard, not the latest version, the Vaude Power Lizard, but the one that Rose used a couple of years back on her West Highland Way and also the Pennine Way. And I could go through the list of goods, really, that I'm choosing to use along similar lines, but perhaps that'll come out as time goes by. The consequences of using older equipment, obviously, is more positive from an environmental point of view. However, the big question I'm sure most listeners will be thinking straight away is, but how heavy is it all? And I did a spreadsheet for this particular reason, which I'll put on the website, and broke everything down that I've actually brought with me, which, to be honest, is probably what I would take if I was doing the TGO again or some other long-distance hike of several weeks, let alone a 5-day jaunt. I've managed to get it down to about 8.5 kilos. That's excluding food, fuel and water. which is the standard way to refer to your base weight. Of those 8.5 kilos, 1.4 kilos is toys or electronics, and that is the recorder I'm using, the camera, my Kindle, because there's going to be some long nights, I think, and the various attachment plugs and leads that you need, and spare batteries, etc. So in reality, actually, it's around the 7 kilo mark, which is a very, very respectable weight to be heading off into the hills with, as many people will know. So it is achievable with older equipment. So you don't necessarily have to buy the latest thing. Which of course reflects naturally on the commercial aspect of the outdoors world. And I've noticed, just going through Aviemore as I have at the moment, I popped into the various outdoor shops, Nevis Sports and the North Face one. Everybody is having a sale. And the Nevis one, virtually half their stock is on the sale rails, which is quite a shock, really. So the impact of the nerves of what's going to happen with Brexit, also perhaps people's thoughts towards making more use of the gear they've got, and that side of things is affecting the commercial aspects. Plus, of course, people forever wanting things cheaper and cheaper and taking the AliExpress route or the Amazon route, where the goods don't actually exist in the UK but come from outside the UK, which of course also reflects on the UK economy because the money's not going back into the pot. Anyway, that's a discussion perhaps for a bit later on. I just thought I'd introduce this particular walk. So it's 5 days, what was originally going to be the Cairngorms and then Dalwhinnie, but actually now it is 5 days between Dalwhinnie and Fort William. And I will naturally get the boys to indulge in a conversation about various aspects of hiking, the systems we all use, the processes for packing, setting up camp, breaking down camp, and anything basically that might help anybody considering doing something like this, or generally wild camping. So, I will catch you later. This is what you come out here for. Oh, after that start this morning, an introduction in the Cairngorm Hotel, we decided, as I think I mentioned, to catch the train down to Dalwhinnie, which took about half an hour, and we set off out the back of Dalwhinnie station about 12 o'clock and then walked the 12 kilometres, I think, just calculated, along Loch Eanaich round to Loch Eanaich on the Land Rover track, and we're now camped up at the end of Loch Eanaich. It's very odd because the forecast was quite serious wherever you looked for the prediction, whether it was the Met Office or the BBC. And as we came on the train, we looked up towards the Cairngorms, and it looked a bit overcast, but it didn't look to be the 70-mile-an-hour winds and the storms they predicted, which of course made us feel a little bit guilty about not going. But once we alighted from the train at Dalwhinnie and started walking, we certainly felt the temperature drop, and the weather did pick up, and we could see it coming across from the west towards us, although it didn't quite hit us where we were. Obviously we're walking along a valley track, so there was that sort of semi-feeling of guilt of not really doing the tops, and then a bit of relief thinking perhaps that was probably the wisest choice. And to be honest, the 12-kilometre walk, has just reminded my back that I haven't carried a weight for a while, and I'm quite glad to stop. It's just gone 4 o'clock now, and as I say, we've pitched up It's sort of a fairly exposed spot, so we hope the predicted weather doesn't hit us this evening, as it hasn't really hit us during the day, so we'll keep our fingers crossed on that score. But everybody's pegged everything down as much as possible, so we're ready for the evening. And so it's into routines, really, setting up camp routine. And we were just discussing it as we were all pitching our tents. We've all got a routine that we need to get into. In the first sort of 24 hours, 48 hours when you're out hiking, everything's in the wrong place and not settled properly in the pack, and your torch is in the wrong pocket and your gloves are in the wrong pocket, and you know, that type of thing. So it's good to just remind yourself actually how things should be. So as I lie here staring out at a nice view across Loch Eanaich, I can see really overcast dark clouds looming in. So I hope that's the worst that it gets tonight, and that occasional flutter of material you hear in the background is as bad as it gets. But we're all thinking that we might just have a bit of a doze really for a couple of hours, and then perhaps start cooking a meal a bit later on. If you have a meal too early now, of course, it means you end up sleeping early, and then you're wide awake come 4 o'clock, which is not necessarily a good place to be. I have to say, this bivvy sheet cover bag, whatever you want to call it, that I've made with the Thermotex blanket and a little bit of thin nylon underneath, and then I've slipped the quilt into it. Gosh, it's warm. It's really comfortable. So I'm hoping that, combined with the Neo Air that I'm lining on, will just give me a lovely, comfortable night's sleep. I've got my old 14-year-old Live down smock on my top end, and something on my head as well, so I am actually really toasty, really comfortable, and I'm just enjoying the lie down to relax my back. Anyway, this is not particularly technical or helpful, I'm sure, to people who are considering wild camping, but really this is what it's all about. The moment where you pitch the tent, you get in, you've got everything sorted, you tucked into your sleeping bag, or you throw it over you just to keep you warm, and you just lie here, no signal, nice view, and just think about stuff. And that's what I'm going to do for the next hour or so. It's getting towards dawn now, and as you can gather, this has been going on all night long. The roaring in the distance is the wind in the trees, and currently the wind has got, I suppose it's got me pinned down with the inner catching the wind. I daren't get out to check the rest of the tent. Every time I check the corners and the main supports, they appear to be upright and intact. And thankfully I used 2 large V-pegs at either end of the power lizard to locate it in the ground, and I made sure they were in well last night, long before this wind picked up. So it's been a bit of a disturbed night, as you might imagine. It's certainly progressively got worse, and to be honest, I'm waiting till daylight comes before I possibly venture out to see if there's been any damage at all. It doesn't feel like there has been damage, it just feels like the wind has really caught the shelter and giving us a pasting, because we are quite exposed and right on the edge of the loch side. We actually, of course, were looking for a tent area, camping area that was sheltered in some way, but this was the only place that we could find a decent, flat, dry area, the rest of it being very boggy and marshy. So we'll see how the next few hours evolves, and This is obviously the storm that was predicted to come through. It seemed to have come through a bit later perhaps. But I suppose looking on the bright side, we could have been on the top of the Cairngorms and been facing something like this, which I think would have been absolutely horrendous. So it's been an entertaining evening, to say the least. Well, unfortunately the worst has happened. 10 minutes after doing that last recording about it's been going all night long, the end support stay stitching finally went, and I've just been outside now, and the power lizard has got two end uprights, one at either end obviously, and then a cross pole, and the end support has been taking all the full force of them as the wind all night long. The stitching at the top has come away on the guy support, so the pole's still intact, but the stitching's pulled away completely. So I've managed to hook a little bit of guy over the top of the pole, over the top of the material, but it's only a matter of time before the material wears through or that slips off. So I'm doing the usual safety thing of packing everything up now in case I need to make a speedy escape. Blimey, it's 7 o'clock, so it is daytime, but it's still only just coming light outside. What a miserable night though, blimey. I slept through most of it though, to be fair. It's just this last violent wind that's really caused the damage, so anyway, I need to, as you can gather, pack this up and get ready for a quick escape should I need to. I'm not too sure if you can hear this, but it's now 7:30 just gone, and we've decided to bail. There's white horses on the lock, and we're just helping each other get the tents down now. Flipping heck. Yeah. You got any more damage to your tents? You're alright, are you?
When I got out, door
Jam.
it's jammed.
Yeah?
But it also it's come out of
The zipper?
the zipper, you know.
Right.
I bet it's happened before on that door, so it's obviously a weak spot somewhere.
On the whole, I slept alright most of the night.
Yeah, and me. I didn't.
And would you believe, here we are again, 5:30 at night, and it's slightly raining. I've just done a emergency patch-up job on the guy point on the shelter, which failed. Bizarrely, they stitched a guy point onto a double hemmed sill nylon piece that hangs over the ventilation triangle at the end of the shelter, and thankfully Lee had a small sewing kit with him, so it wasn't as serious a sewing job as I thought, although obviously trying to do it in a bothy is pretty tricky. Oh dear God, this is just not any fun at all. I'll come back and do this a bit later on, I think. At the moment I've just managed to get the tent pitched before the rain came in, and I've pitched it slightly differently to normal. Rather than having the tail into the wind and catching the brunt of the wind, I've got it sideways in, and obviously it's a larger piece of material that's catching the wind at the moment, So I'm trying to keep everything away from the inner, which is looking like it's got water running down it. But hey, this is a holiday, remember? Right, let's try again. Now it's now 6:15, and let's relive the last 24 hours or so. I was hoping to do this with the guys, but unfortunately, as you could tell from the previous recording, everybody's dived into their shelters and we're all a bit weary, to say the least, of fighting with the weather and just want to get some food inside us and rest for a bit. Been a tough day purely weather-wise. This storm that came through last night, you heard about the disaster last night. Basically, the guy point broke on my shelter about 7 o'clock, and I managed to sleep through most of it, or fairly relaxed through most of it, but it was a hell of a noise, as you heard, whistling through the trees. And we were down, tucked around the corner of Loch Eanaich. So 7:30, Lee came out to just check me and check everybody else, as it were. I was starting to clear up by this stage, and as he did so, the wind caught his door on the scarp and broke the zip, basically. So he was obviously in panic mode to get everything sorted as fast as possible. So we decided to bail 7:30, and we headed round Loch Eanaich towards Wells Lodge, which is a bothy which we'd heard was closed due to asbestos. Anyway, what's that? That's probably about 5 or 6 k's hike, about 3 or 4 miles. Not massive, but it was the headwind, it was the horizontal rain. It was fairly biblical, really, to be on the receiving end of it, and very hard at 7:30 in the morning to get going with no sustenance inside us. But we got to Wells Lodge with the intention to go towards, keep going towards Ben Alder Lodge, and although there was a sign on the side of the bothy said it was closed due to asbestos, we could see there was somebody inside. So we decided to stick our heads in there, and we found 2 German guys who were on a week's long excursion, also pottering around the area, and they were great company. And to be fair, we all sat there while the rain and wind howled around us and heaved, and none of us could find the enthusiasm to actually leave the bothy. So asbestos or no asbestos, we all had a brew, tried to keep our spirits up. The German guys very generously shared some whiskey they'd bought from Dalwhinnie, which was very nice, helped pass the time. While we were there, Lee managed to fix the zip on his scarp. Apparently it happened before, and I think there's a weakness in one of the zip teeth, and it slipped out during the wind pressure. So he managed to get that back in, and so he was happy that he'd got a tent, and therefore we continued up towards Aviemore. When we finally made it down to Ben Alder Lodge, we stuck our head inside there. It looks like somebody was in residence that was perhaps out on a day walk. There's 3 rooms. It's fairly dark and dingy in there, I must admit, and none of us really relished the thought of actually staying in a bothy. We all hate they are very cold, and as much as they're dry on horrible weather, they are very cold unless you get a fire going, and vermin is always a big problem. Every bothy has got loads of mice, and you could tell that from some of the food that was left lying on the side. It all got mouse droppings and had been eaten, etc, etc. So we sat there for 5 or 10 minutes, and I decided to see if I could fix my tent, and although the stitching isn't particularly good, I managed to sew the guy point back onto the sill nylon hem, which is at the end of the tent. A very rough job, but it allowed me to consider at least I can use the tent. So we came out of there when the sun was still starting to appear, and as soon as we put the tents up, as you heard on the last recording, heavens opened up and the wind struck up again. However, it stopped long enough now for me to get down and clean my socks, wash out my shoes like you're supposed to do when you're using trail shoes, get rid of all the small fine grit, get a couple of couple of litres of water, admire the view. Loch Eanaich is absolutely massive. It's just like staring out to sea, but it's a beautiful location, and when the sun's bursting through those dark black clouds, it's quite an impressive sight. You can hear the river next to me, which is Alder Burn, coming down, and that's in spate at the moment. Thankfully there's a bridge across, but I don't think we're going across there tomorrow. I think we're heading back to Loch Eanaich, and then where did they say we were going? Lock Ossian, I think they said we were going. I'm following Lee really on this one. He's the one that's planned this one out. So heading towards Loch Ossian and then heading ultimately towards Fort William. I'd like to have got the guys on today because they have got lots of little stories and things that I wanted to touch on about systems and how we approach these different disasters, and you know how we all prepared for it. I was fully dressed, Lee was fully dressed halfway through the night. Everything was bagged up, ready to go should we need to bail, and consequently we were able to bail and get out there within 5 or 10 minutes, which was obviously important. Anyway, hopefully we'll get the guys on at some stage when everything has calmed down, either at a bothy or somewhere where the wind actually stops. It's been full on for 24 hours, and the weather forecast when we left home implied that the rest of the week was sunshine and showers, which we can live with far more than the last 24 hours. So until I pick up next time, I'll catch you later. Well, it's 7:15 and dusk is really upon us fast. So before we get our heads down, I'm going to have a quick word with the guys. Hiya, Lee. Did you have that summit to eat?
Yes, yeah.
Tonight or?
No, last night.
Last night. What did you reckon to it?
Excellent.
Yeah? I've just had the 5-bean cassoulet. I'd rather put the water in the bag. I put the food into the pan and put it into a pot cosy.
Yes.
Absolutely fantastic.
Sounds like a good idea, but I'll stick with the old-fashioned way. Mine was spaghetti bolognese.
Have a slurp of that.
Excellent.
I've been trying to relate to people what the last 24 hours have been like. We'll have a drink of that first before you think of the right expletives. What would you think coming out of Dalwhinnie?
Coming out of Dalwhinnie was not too bad. We got the tents up in the dry okay and was quite comfortable until sort of probably midnight when the wind really picked up, and a bit of an uncomfortable night. I was sort of at 3 o'clock in the morning I got all dressed, and just in case I had to bail out the tent, but it wasn't until probably 6 in the morning that the bailing out had to be done.
Yeah, it all came very quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, very quickly. It was horrendous.
It was pretty biblical. And then the morning we continued on. Wasn't much better, was it? Walking in it.
No, we walked for an hour in the wind and rain until we got to, thank you, Carroll Bothy. Thank you.
Bit rum and raisin. Yeah.
And well, it's quite enjoyable in there, wasn't it?
It was nice to sit inside out the rain and chat with those German guys.
Yeah.
And share their whiskey.
Yes, yeah, there was some nice guys. But considering the bothy is supposed to be shut.
No, grateful for it though.
Yeah, very grateful.
It would have been another 4 or 5 hours walking.
Whether they opened the bothy because of the forecast, I wonder. But yeah, a blessed release.
And then coming down here to Ben Alder, bit of a yomp I thought. It was a bit sort of, reminded me of when you come through the Larry Grew, that track that just seems to go on for far too long going to Derry Lodge.
Certainly when we came over the pass, that was quite quick, but on the way down to Ben Alder Cottage, it seemed to go on forever. You could see the lock, but it never got any closer.
And you managed to fix your zip, of course, which was a great bonus.
Yes, my zip broke on the tent, and I managed to get the needle and the thread out and repair it. Yeah. So, yeah, quite pleased with that.
Thanks for the loan of that as well to fix my one. Another tab's gone, but it's not that vital, so we can carry on.
Yeah. that's okay.
You wake, Tony.
I'll have it back when you're finished with it.
Cheers, Lee. You get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, and yourself.
What time are we off tomorrow, by the way?
There's no rush. No, probably 9 at the very, very earliest.
Oh,
no
excellent.
rush.
Good. Good night, mate.
Good night.
Which side are you on? Oh, you this side. Like a drop of whiskey, mate.
No, I'm fine.
You sure?
Fine, yeah.
Would you like a dash of rum and raisin chocolate?
Oh, a piece of chocolate.
Ah,
Yeah.
tempted you.
Yes, thank you very much.
So what's your thoughts on the last 24 hours then?
It's been an adventure again. All weather has been thrown at us. That's
Hasn't
all
it
I can
just?
say. Typical Scottish weather. Yeah. But you've got to put up with it, and that's it. Just get
Yeah.
on with it. No use moaning.
Bit of a panic this morning though to get out, wasn't it? Get out of that rain, out of that wind.
Oh, yes, yeah. Luckily, Curlabothy was close by, so that was a bolt hole that we headed for.
Yeah.
And stayed a few hours, 3 hours maybe, and till the wind died down, which was driving the rain really hard. And then we set off. I think it was about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, something like that. We set off, and it was okay then until we got to Ben Alder Cottage, and just all hell broke loose again.
I know. I'm going to in for
yeah.
another night of it, but I
Yeah.
can see there's a half moon actually over the loch. It's looking really beautiful. It looks clear, doesn't? The clouds aren't
everything's-
moving fast.
Everything's calm at the moment, you know. So hopefully tomorrow will be a better day, a dry day at least, and the rivers will have died down a little bit. So crossing the rivers will be a little bit easier, you know. So looking forward to it.
Cool. Okay, mate.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave you to your good night's
My
sleep
chocolate, yeah. Thank
and
you
your
very
chocolate, and I'll catch you tomorrow.
Will do. Yeah.
Cheers.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To hear or see more from our extensive free library, please visit theoutdoorstation.co.uk.